But let's begin with potential, that's the key word here, potential progress out on Capitol Hill after what's been nearly 6 weeks of a government shutdown. A deal is on the table that could end what has been the longest government shutdown in U.S. history. Now, 8 mostly moderate Democrats joined Senate Republicans late last night in voting to advance a House-passed short-term funding plan. You see them all here on your screen. The agreement contains a package of full-year appropriations bills and an extension of temporary funding. The Senate and House still need to approve the full measure, but some supporters of the bill say this is really the only option.
This was the only deal on the table. It was our best chance to reopen the government.
There was a zero chance of having a work on the ACA. Now there's a measurable chance.
All of us, Republicans and Democrats, who support this bill know that the time to act is now.
CBS News political reporter Hunter Woodall joins us to explain what just happened. Hunter, good morning to you. So what is being amended in this bill compared to what was originally passed by the House that somehow has been able to convince 7 Democrats and the independent Senator Angus King to support it?
Good morning, Errol. When you look at what's happened in the last 24 hours, Senate Democrats, at least a few of them, or enough needed to advance this short-term funding measure, has come together. Now, what's significant here is as you talked about at the top here, there are some changes, there are some full-year funding bills in this package, but significantly, this would fund the entire government through January 30th of 2026. That's a big move here, given how obviously we've been stuck in the shutdown for weeks now. But at the same time, there's clear tension about what all this means. When you look at how the government shutdown has impacted many people around the country, including when it comes to federal food aid. This package, as we look at the details that have been released overnight, the compromise would essentially help fund that federal food aid that is so critical to many around the country. But there's still contention about what it will do for these expiring healthcare tax credits that Democrats have been so focused on. So far, it does not seem like this will do much to actually get those expiring tax credits fulfilled or extended, though it does apparently set up a vote for them later on. And it's also significant, too. Oh, go ahead, Errol.
Well, no, Hunter, I want you to speak about the significance of the split, it seems, among Democrats who are trying to be in lockstep with each other in resisting the Republican bill. But now you have at least 7, plus Angus King, who caucuses with them, who have buckled. Why is that?
And that's a really notable thing here. And I'll note that New Hampshire U.S. Senator Jeanne Shaheen, a Democrat, was on CBS Mornings earlier today talking about how this deal came together. Let's give it a listen.
I think the focus should stay on the people who are responsible for where we are. This is the first shutdown where we saw Donald Trump refuse to provide the benefits to make sure that people could continue to eat. We need to keep the focus on them, not on continuing to fight a battle that we are going to be able to continue because of the vote.
That just tells you where the tensions are, Errol. Democrats are clearly feeling the heat about this compromise.
All right, Hunter Woodall, thank you very much on Capitol Hill for us. We want to jump now to commentary just made by the Republican House Speaker, Mike Johnson. Let's listen.
To finding solutions to reduce the oppressive costs of health care under the Unaffordable Care Act. We just made clear that we would not and should not ever do that. That is, negotiate as hostages. And I've also reminded you here every morning at this press conference throughout the shutdown, Republicans have not just been talking about reducing costs and fraud and abuse in so many areas and in health care. We've been actually passing new laws to accomplish that urgent mission for the people, and we will continue to do so. So here's where we are by way of schedule, just so you know, you're following. And if you're not at home, if you're waking up to this good news this morning, the Senate's vote late last night of 60 to 40 opens the door now. The Senate is moving forward on an amended House CR, a continuing resolution, that will reopen the government until January 30th. Added to that are provisions to fully fund SNAP provisions through the end of the next fiscal year, which is September 2026, guaranteed back pay for all federal workers who have been made to endure these hardships over the last several weeks. And it also includes passage of 3 appropriations bills, which we're grateful to be moving through the process. That is the Military Construction Veterans Affairs bill, it's the Agriculture bill, and the Legislative Branch bill. The Senate will be back in session this morning to finish their job, and we're certainly praying that they do. They'll need unanimous consent from all senators to fast-track their final vote. As you know, there are some procedural hurdles that one or more could throw in the way, but we certainly hope that they won't do that because so many people across this country are desperate for the government to reopen.
All right, Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson there, welcoming progress made on the Senate side of Congress when it comes to funding the government. Hunter Woodall was listening to this with us as well. Hunter, does that mean that the House will get a vote on this eventually? I didn't hear the House Speaker specify the schedule on the House side, but what do you make of what we just heard?
And that's a great observation, Errol. When you look at what Speaker Johnson just said there, he obviously seems warm and encouraging about what the Senate compromise does and what it could mean for ending this government shutdown. But really, it does, if it does clear the Senate, as it is expected to at some point this week, it does put the onus on House Republicans whether or not they're going to be able to pass this bill. Democrats, obviously, especially in the House, are already signaling their opposition to this deal. So if there is going to be an end to the government shutdown, if this bill does clear the Senate, it's likely to be incumbent on House Republicans to support it in enough numbers to actually get passed into law and send it to President Trump's desk.
All right, and we'll continue to listen to the House Speaker. Hunter Woodall, thank you very much. We want to jump now to the White House. That's where we find CBS News Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cordes, who was also listening to the Republican House Speaker. Nancy, good morning to you once again. We've got this shutdown rolling on for most people, but how does the president view the progress being made thanks to some Democrats and momentum now possibly on the House side?
Well, he celebrated the possibility of a deal this weekend, Errol, and posted that it was happening. And so he seems to be on board with anything that is going to lead to the government reopening without major concessions from Republicans. So I don't anticipate that there's anything in this negotiated deal that would lead the president to stand in the way and do anything but sign the funding bill into law once it finally does pass in the Senate and the House.
And part of what's included are additional payments and funding for SNAP, that's the federal food assistance. But in real time today, payments are being held back, or at least they're not being distributed because of the legal battle over forcing the administration to pay out those SNAP payments. Can you just update us on where that stands for the tens of millions of Americans who rely on it?
Sure. There's been this whole legal battle over the past couple of weeks as the administration first signaled that it didn't plan to issue SNAP benefits for the first time in this program's 60-year history, and then saying that it would only partially issue SNAP benefits until the government reopened. This went all the way up to the Supreme Court. In fact, over the weekend, USDA even threatened states that did fully pay out SNAP benefits with some kind of financial penalty for doing so. And that's partly what forced this group of Senate Democrats to decide that they were going to cut a deal with Republicans, because they said they were very concerned that needy Americans were not going to be getting the food assistance that they need for no appreciable reason other than that it was being used by the administration as leverage in this ongoing battle with Senate Democrats.
And Nancy, I want to ask you about the other big headline from overnight when most of our viewers were likely sleeping. The president has pardoned dozens of people, including Rudy Giuliani, Sidney Powell, and others accused of trying to overturn the 2020 election results. Tell us about who was pardoned and why, it seems.
It was an array of individuals who were part of the president's either personal legal team or worked in the White House towards the end of his first term, including his former chief of staff, Mark Meadows, individuals who the president conversed with about how he could fight back against the 2020 election outcome, whether that was creating alternative slates of electors or placing pressure on various state officials to overturn the outcome or change the outcome in their states. The president basically providing preemptive pardons to 77 individuals who are not currently facing any kinds of federal charges for these actions. Some of them faced charges in Georgia in a state case. But because none of these individuals were actually facing federal charges, these pardons are by and large symbolic. President Trump, who has maintained to this day that there was something fishy about the 2020 election, despite a lack of evidence of that, declared that he was issuing these pardons as an attempt to heal the country, Errol.
All right, Nancy Cordes with the latest on all those big headlines. Thank you very much, Nancy.